Okay, we're recording. All right. We're on the incident response unit. And then module 10 is responding to a cyber incident. So abnormal network traffic volume. Bandwidth monitoring is used for several reasons. Monitoring bandwidth agreements, internet bandwidth purchased from an internet service provider or ISP typically guarantees, sorry, gonna make sure my phone's turned off there, typically guarantees that the speed will be at a specific level. So you monitor these to make sure that you are not getting messed out of your actual bandwidth that you're supposed to be having. Troubleshooting network performance. Network bandwidth monitoring can help identify performance issues on a network that otherwise might be difficult to isolate. Identifying network abuse. It is not uncommon for a few employees to monopolize wireless bandwidth. It's not just wireless. I've seen people try to run torrents and all sorts of things off of their work computers, not thinking that it was actually being monitored. So you never know what you're going to see. Slow network traffic may also be caused by unauthorized users. Planning for future network capacity. By monitoring network bandwidth, organizations are better prepared to plan ahead for future bandwidth capacity. Traffic spikes. A sudden unusual surge in network bandwidth use is called a traffic spike. Some network traffic spikes are normal and may occur for several reasons. If there's scheduled internal backups, because backups contain large amounts of data, they consume extensive bandwidth in order to be completed in a reasonable amount of time. Remote external backups. Most organizations perform remote backups to the cloud, which may cause traffic spikes. So there's a reason why those two things are usually put at like 2, 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. So those traffic spikes don't mess with normal working hours. Software updates, operating system patches, application software updates, and other software updates can be temporarily cause a spike, especially if you don't have, sorry, cat scratching leg, especially if you don't have them set to disperse to not all of your computers at the same time. If you don't have patch management, because you can set it so it does so many machines at a time. And if you don't, then it just kind of floods your network all at once, which means patch Tuesdays are particularly fun for your network. Mail server problems. If a problem occurs in the delivery of email, a mail server may persistently try to send out messages over a set period of time, usually 24 hours. If the emails contain large file attachments like video clips, they can cause a spike, which is also why you see so many places put file size limits on your sent and receive on your emails. Using traffic spikes as evidence of cyber incident is considered to be difficult for several reasons. Normal spikes are not uncommon, so it's easy for a malware spike to be camouflaged. Malware can be programmed to perform an event that causes a traffic spike at a regular interval, such as a large data exfiltration that occurs at 6 p.m. each Wednesday, so that it looks like a normal event. Bandwidth consumption. Just as a sudden traffic spike may indicate a cyber incident, so can an overall increase in the amount of bandwidth being used. Most network bandwidth monitoring tools can be set to sound an alert when bandwidth consumption exceeds a certain threshold. Questions when determining the cause of a traffic spike. So question on the left, explanation on right. Do the spikes appear at the same time on the same day? Identifying a pattern in the spikes may help indicate if this is a normal activity or a cyber incident. Do the spikes occur during business hours or at other times? A spike that occurs during business hours may indicate a user is causing the spike, while a spike in off hours could be due to scheduling issues. So you just have to investigate further. Do other monitoring points on the network match these patterns? A CPU load spike on a server may be creating a corresponding network traffic spike. Can the traffic be analyzed with a packet analyzer? A packet analyzer can identify the data and underlying cause of the network spike. Stealth transmissions. Stealth is defined as an activity that is not seen or heard. Stealthy actions are secretive, clandestine, or covert. Secretive and unexpected network transmissions may often be a symptom of a cyber incident. Threat actors go to great lengths to hide stealth transmissions, but security professionals should be vigilant at detecting them. Stealth transmissions that could indicate a cyber incident include irregular internal peer-to-peer communications or external beaconing. Regular peer-to-peer communications. Under normal network conditions, most communications can occur between many lower-level clients to fewer high-level servers. However, if clients unexpectedly begin irregular internal communication with other peers of the network, this unusual symptoms could be an indication of a cyber incident. An infected endpoint could be targeting another endpoint to spread malware or to pivot to other devices and services, especially if communications occur sporadically and at odd hours. Beaconing. Beaconing occurs when infected devices attempt to contact a threat actor's external command and control server. The purpose of communicating with the CNC server is usually two-way: to receive updated or new instructions from the server and to upload stolen data to the CNC server. So if you're starting to see this pinging back and forth, it could be indication that it's beaconing out to its CNC server. Receiving instructions. Some compromised endpoints access the CNC server to receive updated or new instructions with the same frequency. Some endpoints communicate more frequently than other endpoints depending upon the type of attack. For example, one particular type of attack, by its very nature, receives many instructions from a CNC server. This is an attack that places the infected device under the remote control of an attacker for the purposes of launching the attacks on other remote devices. Infected, I believe there was someone was asking about this in chat. The infected robot computer is known as a bot or zombie. When hundreds, thousands, or even millions of bot computers are gathered into a logical computer network, they create a botnet under the control of a bot herder. For some reason, every time I hear bot herder, I think Nerf herder from Star Wars. That's just my own level of geek, though. Uses of botnets. So the types of attack and the descriptions. Spamming. That's what they originally were created for. Botnets are widely recognized as the primary source of spam emails. A botnet consisting of thousands of bots enables an attacker to send massive amounts of spam. Spreading malware. Botnets can be used to spread malware and create new bots and botnets. Bots have the ability to download and execute a file sent by the attacker. Manipulating online polls. Because each bot has a unique internet protocol or IP address, each, quote, vote by a bot will have the same credibility as a vote cast by a real person. Online games can be manipulated in a similar way. Denying service. So this is your DDoS attacks. Botnets can flood a web server with thousands of requests and overwhelm it to the point that it cannot respond to legitimate requests. Yeah, it's botnets. I've seen this happen. I don't know if any of you have ever played those games where you have to have like multiple computers in order to gain like resources for things like that. I've seen video games like that where you have lots of things like that, and it can really mess it up when you find someone that has access to possibly thousands of them through something like this. That it just completely kills the vibe of the game, because it's just like, well, that's why they have people that you know, the anti-cheating protocols and things like that. So like, I sincerely doubt that you are able to use 1,000 computers by yourself. So, you know, there have been yeah, no, they are not legal for any purposes. There's no like rent-a-bot. So I don't even think you can go out and, I mean, legally look for them. So beware of that. Stealing data. Attacks that are designed to steal information communicate with the CNC server as the means to transport the data back to the threat actors. A variety of techniques can be used, often depending upon the cunning and ingenuity of the threat actors. Also, if they're a state-funded threat actor, they have a phenomenal amount of higher speed internet, higher speed devices, much larger storage capacity, things like that. Hiding stealth transmissions. Okay, instead of distinctive protocols, threat actors may use standard network protocols that do not attract attention. Using common network protocols when exfiltrating data can also help mask stealth transmissions. Most malware does not use a distinctive protocol that can be easily identified. For example, BitTorrent is a popular file sharing protocol used to distribute data and files over the internet. It has also been used for external beaconing. However, this protocol can easily be detected using a packet analyzer that has protocols built in so that identifying transmissions based on protocols become a simple task. Oh, yay, polling activity. Alvaro has been tasked to acquire tape to secure evidence bags that cannot be removed and reapplied without leaving visual evidence. What type of tape should he use? Tamper evident, tamper resistant, tamper impervious, tamper controlled. I don't know why they threw this one in there, but give it your best shot.
They threw it in there because it's a really tough question.
They just like to add all the little tamper in there too. So tamper evident. So, and one thing I will tell you that I always did in my classes, and this is something that a lot of first-time officers would do. When you're sealing an evidence envelope or something, a tiny piece of tape on one portion of it is not okay. You have to seal anywhere that they can stick their fingers. So if you put it here and someone can stick their finger in and mess with stuff, that's still going to get messed up. So you have to seal and do the corners and the whole shebang. So exactly, anywhere there's a tamper tantrum. Oh my gosh, I love that. I wish I had thought of that when I was teaching the classes. But yeah, anywhere there's an opening. They had boxes, and if there was they called it a non-manufacturing seam, and that means that anywhere that wasn't like glued down, that wasn't evident, you had to seal with your tamper evident tape. Okay. Yeah. Okay, peer-to-peer command and control, or P2P CNC configuration, masks both types of stealth transmission, irregular peer-to-peer communications, and data exfiltration through beaconing to combine standard protocols with an internal mesh network of infected devices so the devices can communicate easily. This technique allows a single compromised computer to act as an internal CNC device that receives instructions from the threat actor's main CNC server and then distributes these commands to other compromised devices while also acting as the single exit point for exfiltrating stolen data back to the external CNC server. A P2P CNC configuration has several advantages for a threat actor. Reduced number of external beacons. It has only one device that performs beaconing with the CNC server instead of with each device. So instead of having like bing, 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 you have like one. So it's a lot harder to track. This results in less traffic beyond the edges of the network, which is less likely to raise suspicion. Aligns with traffic inspection prioritization. Most security technicians tend to maximize the priority of inspecting external traffic on the edge of the network while minimizing inspection on the internal network. A P2P CNC can exploit this tendency because it has only one device communicating externally. Does not use restricted protocols. Most networks treat some classes of traffic differently, depending on whether it is used internally within the network or at the edge for external communications. A P2P CNC does not have to rely on restricted protocols to draw attention. A named pipe is a logical connection, such as a TCP session between a client and a server that uses SMB. The name of the pipe serves as the endpoint for communication. So here's your example of, there's your P2P CNC mesh network inside. Everything goes around and then hits your main computer here, and then that pipes everything out. And you can see where your command and control server is on the external network. Detecting stealth transmissions. Did someone have a question?
I was gonna say, I was wondering if I was imagining it right. So the way I imagine all the networks is basically like everything that goes on inside a network is inside a giant bubble or dome. And then, so for this instance, basically someone set up a tower inside the network, and then that tower is used to shoot out instead of a bunch of lines or a bunch of exit vectors from the bubble.
Yes, they don't necessarily have to set up the tower. Usually what they do is they, it's usually one of the infected by the botnet, and they choose, usually they choose the one with the best resources or the least security as the, basically, if you think about like the point of contact within that bubble to arrow things and exfiltrate things out to the command and control server. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Detecting P2P and CNC can be difficult because the traffic uses standard protocols to blend in with normal internal and external network traffic. However, some symptoms can be helpful in detecting a P2P CNC. Abnormal processes to named pipes, known malicious named pipe names, abnormally named pipe security descriptors. When examining networks for stealth transmissions, the following may serve as symptoms. Remote connections to named pipes. A network tap or connector can be used to inspect SMB network traffic for a remote connection to named pipes. Abnormal host-to-host traffic. If certain high-value servers rarely, if ever, create network connections with certain network subnets that contain user workstations, but suddenly a large number of network connections is identified from one of these high-value servers to a workstation subnet, this could be identified as abnormal. So if you suddenly have a server that doesn't normally connect with those other ones, and then all of a sudden it's got its own little subnet of workstations, you could go, wait a minute, that's not normal. And, go out and take a look, and more than likely you'll have your pointer that's doing all the work for the CNC mesh. Scan sweeps. In preparation for unleashing a cyber incident, threat actors will attempt to perform scan sweeps on a network to uncover any vulnerabilities. These scan sweeps include ping sweeps to determine if a host is, quote, awake, port scans to look for available services on open ports. Do you remember when we were doing Nmap last week? That's where you, and if you're doing the website one like Nikto, you look out and say, okay, these are the ports. Are they open? Those are the type of things they're talking about. Any scan sweeps that originate from unknown IP addresses should be considered symptoms to be investigated. Rogue devices. A final symptom of a cyber incident are unauthorized devices or rogue detection on a network. On a wired network, a rogue device may attempt to monitor network traffic. The 4 types of wireless probes are wireless device probe, desktop probe, access point probe, and a dedicated probe. I will say, working at a school district, there were several times that we had rogue devices that turned out to be people that tried to end run our security policies and plug in things like a smart speaker into a school classroom, which is a big no-no. It's against Idaho law, as well as federal law, because they record it all the time, and you're not supposed to be doing that without specific consent from the parents of the students. So we said nope, and then we had all the other security IoT device issues that were out there. But yeah, if you ever look at the ins and outs of COPA, it is the law that gives parents the right to say yes or no whether or not their kids' data is collected. Well, if you, which is also the reason why we can, in Idaho, you can put cameras in the hallway, which are public areas for security reasons, but you cannot put them in classrooms, because when you put them in classrooms, that's one of those private areas where you end up having to have permission from all the parents, and it is just a huge legal issue. So anything that records or anything like that inside of the classroom is a big no-no. The law of COPE, yes, there you go. But no, COPA, C-O-P-P-A is the law. But yeah, it's really interesting, and a lot of it was put out there because they'd have people that would go out for identity theft and start snagging these kids like information and number, and by the time they got old enough to look for credit cards, they would look out there and go, why do I have a credit card history? Why do I have this? Why do I have? And it's because someone at some point in their childhood stole this information and started using their identity. So things like that, and then things like parents having no say over whether or not the data could be recorded for places like Facebook and things like that, were a big place of where that came into being. High volume consumption of resources. Just as an unusually high electric bill can indicate a problem that needs attention, an endpoint system with an abnormally high volume of resource consumption is often an IOC, an indicator of, it's saying there's a problem. The categories of resource consumption include processors, memory, and hard drives. So it's basically the same thing that when you're looking at a network that you would be looking at, like for individual computers. Like if your processor suddenly shoots up, or the use of your memory, or you have a whole bunch of hard drive space taken, those things would indicate problems just as they would on a network. Processor consumption. Unlike previous generations of central processing units or CPUs that contain only one core to receive instructions and perform actions, modern CPUs usually contain 2 to 18 cores. And then you have, the ones that have multiple CPUs per board, if you've got a rig like that. Today's processors use simultaneous multi-threading or hyper-threading that can split each core into multiple threads or virtual cores. One CPU chip thus has the capacity of multiple CPUs. Threat actors take advantage of processors with multiple cores. Malware that infects a host computer may run in the background with no appreciable impact on normal user tasks. If the malware performs a significantly complicated or lengthy task, the host computer may begin to slow down, indicating a problem. Several tools can be used to determine if a cyber incident is taxing a processor's resource, a process called processor consumption. A resource monitor can audit and display the CPU along with other endpoint resources. Memory consumption. Memory consumption can also be a symptom of a cyber incident. As malware loads into RAM, it can consume large parts of memory, causing the endpoint to slow down or become unstable. Memory consumption can be identified by resource monitoring tools. Hard drive consumption. Drive capacity consumption refers to the unexpected loss of available hard drive space as a result of malware. From either of the following reasons, malware gathers files from several different endpoints or servers prior to data exfiltration, or it performs continual scan sweeps that rapidly increase the size and number of log files. Resource monitoring tools can help provide clues to determine if drive capacity consumption is a symptom of a cyber incident. A lot of times, if you look at when the files have been changed, that'll also give you just a rough indicator. Operating system evidence. Evidence of a compromise can most often be found in the OS running on the endpoint, as this is a frequent target of threat actors. Malicious process is is the instance of a computer program being executed by more than one or more threads. Threat actors often create an unauthorized malicious process that the OS runs. Sometimes they'll tack things on to ones that look like legit processes, or they'll rename one so it looks like a legit process. I've seen some really creative use on those. Abnormal process behavior. Threat actors also attempt to change a normal process into performing malicious acts, known as abnormal OS processor behavior. File system changes to files. File system change or anomaly may serve as an IOC as threat actors infect or modify a file. Changes to registry, unexpected modifications, or an abnormal registry setting, registry change or anomaly can serve as an IOC. Unauthorized scheduled task. An unauthorized scheduled task that was not approved and initiated by an administrator can often be another IOC. So this is your task manager screen, and you can see your name, that's your process name, your status, what triggered it, next time it's supposed to run, when it was last run, and whether it was completely successful. Is it currently running? This is what it looks like. Now, when you go through these different tabs, you can look at the different things on those as well. I highly suggest, if you haven't been going through this, that you do, because it's a really good resource. Unauthorized changes. Often threat actors attempt to make changes to an operating system setting, particularly as they relate to security. Unauthorized privileges. Creating unauthorized privileges is changing operating system settings or exploiting a vulnerability in software to gain access to resources that the user normally would be restricted from accessing. Software-related symptoms. Evidence of a cyber incident can be found in software. The most obvious symptom is unauthorized software that is silently installed by threat actors on the endpoint. Restricting unauthorized software from running on a computer in which the user has administrative privileges can be difficult. Some OS configurations allow an administrator to create a pre-approved whitelist of software that is permitted to run. Data exfiltration. Another symptom is the attempts by threat actors to steal data and transfer it to an external source, data exfiltration. Symptoms often include hard drive consumption on select servers that serve as staging areas for accumulating the data into a single location before it is exported. Unusual activity. Sorry, I need to move something around so I can see. An application that suddenly exhibits unusual activity may be a result of a cyber incident. These activities include the following. Anomalous activity. An application that has been working normally and suddenly exhibits unusual behavior might indicate that a virus or other malware has altered the application in some way. Unexpected output. An application that suddenly produces unanticipated output, such as an error message that is poorly formatted or a request for unusual user input, may be an indication of malware infection. Service interruptions. Some applications link to other applications for data exchange or communication. Modified application log. A change log file can serve as an IOC, as threat actors may attempt to edit the application log that shows what applications were launched, when, and by whom in an attempt to cover their tracks. New account creation. For a higher level of security, some applications require that a separate user account be created and stored in a database linked to the application. This means that a user must log in to the application separate from logging into the operating system. Malware can often try to compromise a user application database by creating a new account, introduction of new accounts. This could allow the threat actor to log into the application or allow a malicious running process to connect to the application itself. An unexpected new account should be investigated immediately. I think that one goes without saying, but you know, I've seen different things like that pop up and people are like, it's fine. I think a random account, especially one that does not follow, because pretty much everywhere I've worked has some sort of account naming convention, especially if it doesn't follow your naming convention, you definitely should immediately investigate. Unexpected outbound communications. An application that communicate externally, such as through an internal FTP feature, should be considered compromised if it unexpectedly begins performing outbound communications. Any unanticipated outbound communication is likely symptom of an application compromise. Knowledge check. Which of the following is not a reason for bandwidth monitoring? To identify cyber incident, to troubleshoot network performance, to monitor bandwidth agreements, to find application buffer overflows. Okay. D, you're not going to see that on bandwidth monitoring. Now, I do not like how this class they've been throwing them both in there together. Which of the following is not a helpful question in determining the cause of traffic spikes? Do the spikes appear at the same time on the same day? Do other monitoring points on the network match these patterns? Do the spikes occur during business hours or at other time? Is the traffic using all common protocols? Remember, is not a helpful question. Couple more. Okay, let's see what they say. Apparently they were fond of that letter in these last two. All right, digital forensics. I'm guessing that's why they threw a forensics question in there too. The application of science to questions that are of interest to the legal profession, also known as forensic science, can be applied to technology. As computers are the foundation of communicating and recording information, computer forensics uses technology to search for computer evidence of a crime and can attempt to retrieve information, even if it's been altered or erased, that can be used in the pursuit of the cyber attacker or criminal who has used technology for their criminal activity. The importance of computer forensics is due in part to the following: amount of digital forensics. Just as technology is widely used in all areas of life today, criminals use technology in the preparation and often in the execution of their crimes, leaving behind large volumes of digital evidence that can be retrieved through computer forensics. Increased scrutiny by the legal profession. The procedures used in retrieving, transporting, and storing digital evidence are now held to the same standards as those used with physical evidence. Higher level of computer skill by criminals. As criminals become increasingly sophisticated in their knowledge of computers and techniques such as encryption, a computer forensics expert is often needed to retrieve the evidence. So you can't just throw somebody who has no clue what's going on with the computer out there and expect them to know what they're doing. Oh, this is fun. Elements of a forensics kit. So these are things that you should have. Digital forensics workstation. Although caveat, if you go out and look at pre-made digital forensics workstations, they are insanely expensive. There are some very good articles on how to build ones yourself with tools. A lot of them they use, if you build them yourself, they use high-end gaming components and cases that just have multiple bays in them so that you can have write blockers and things like that put in there in those different bays. Write blockers, they have ones for towers, they have ones for digital, like portable stuff. Does anyone know why write blockers are important to digital forensics? Anybody guess?
Because everything you do with any sort of evidence is always on a copy of it, not the original.
Yes, exactly. Good point. So that is exactly why you use write blockers. You don't want to accidentally overwrite while you're making the copy. So because you want to have what's called a digitally sound forensic copy, using write blockers ensures that. Cables and drive adapters. I've seen some really interesting forensic toolkits, and a lot of people carry an insane amount of cables and adapters. Other tools, cameras, wiped removable media, crime scene tape, seals, documents, and forms. A lot of times they also have, now they have the specialty non-static, because some, depending on what the components are, some of them, if they're jury-rigged, can be really sensitive to static. So they have the non-static box or non-static bags. They also have, if they're trying to corral but not remove the power, they also have basically what are look like little mobile Faraday cages so that you remove its ability to remotely talk, but you don't affect anything else on the system. Okay, forensic procedures, secure the scene. Once the incident response team arrives, their first job is to secure the scene. The physical surroundings of the device computer should be clearly documented. Use a video camera to capture video of all the work performed by the incident response team to demonstrate that proper procedures were followed. Photographs of the area should be taken before anything is touched. And the reason I say that really loudly, you'll see in a second, to help document that the computer was working prior to the attack. Also, you want to make sure what was plugged in where, because you remember we talking about those OMG cables, and if you don't know what all is going to be plugged into that computer. So you really need to have photographs, drawings, notes, whatever you want. Any cables connected to a device should be labeled and documented, the hardware components and how they were connected. The team should take custody of the device along with any peripherals such as USB flash drives and other media so that data evidence is secured. It's called data acquisition. The team must speak with those present to perform interviews with witnesses and everyone who has access to the system, and then document their findings, including what those people were doing with the system, what its intended functions were, and how it has been affected by the unauthorized actions. That depends on what type of system you're retrieving. Forensic procedures preserve the evidence. Depending upon the type and severity of the incident, it may be necessary to immediately involve the judicial system to help collect and preserve the digital evidence. One of the first steps is e-discovery, which is identifying, collecting, and producing electronically stored information, or ESI, in response to a request in an investigation or lawsuit. Once the data has been identified, it can be placed under a legal hold, meaning that it cannot be modified, deleted, erased, or otherwise destroyed. It's important to validate that what is being analyzed is what was on the original device and has not been altered, changing the binaries. Documenting the contents can be accomplished by using a one-way hash cryptographic algorithm. A hash algorithm creates a unique digital fingerprint or a set of data. This process is called hashing, and the resulting fingerprint is a digest, sometimes called a message digest or a hash. Common hash algorithms are used in forensic investigations. A family of algorithms known as Message Digest or MD. MD5 is the best known of those. Another is Secure Hash or SHA. Let's see. Document chain of custody. Documenting the evidence from the very beginning is called provenance. The chain of custody documents that the evidence was always under strict control and no unauthorized person was given the opportunity to corrupt the evidence. A chain of custody is a detailed document describing where the evidence was at all times from the beginning of the investigation. If that is messed up, the piece of evidence is thrown out by the judge, and whatever you do, it cannot be brought back. Examine for evidence. Stop. When examining technology devices that may contain evidence called artifacts, it's critical to follow a specific order. Different data sources have different degrees of preservation. In order of volatility must be followed to preserve the most fragile data first. Data stored in RAM, such as RAM slack, can be viewed using endpoint memory forensic tools. When examining hard drives for evidence, endpoint disk forensic tools, it's important to not rely on an application running under a standard operating system in an attempt to view the I think they mean underlying data, the underlying data. Carving extracts raw data blocks of the hard drive so the full contents of the drive can be examined. So here's your order of volatility. So order numbers on the left, examples and description. So number 1, registers and CPU cache. Registers and the CPU cache are extremely volatile and change constantly. 2, routing tables, ARP cache, process table, kernel, statistics, and RAM. The network routing and processing tables have data located on network devices that can change quickly while the system is in operation. And kernel statistics are moving between cache and main memory, which makes them highly volatile. RAM information can be lost if power is lost. I know there were a lot of officers that did not understand computers and thought they could just yank the plug out and transport it. And even in my basic evidence classes, you could see that people go twitch, twitch. And so they had to learn you can't just power down random electronic devices just purely for things like this. 3, temporary file systems. Temporary file systems are not subject to the degree of rapid changes as the preceding elements. 4, hard drive. Hard drive data is relatively stable. 5, remote logging and monitoring data. Although remote logging and monitoring is more volatile than hard drive data, the data on a hard drive is considered more valuable and should be preserved first. 6 is physical configuration and network topology. These items are not considered volatile and do not have a significant impact on an investigation. 7, archival media. Data that has been preserved in archival form is not considered volatile. Enable recovery. For this is the next one for forensic procedure. A final analysis looks at recovering the data from the security event and considers lessons that can be learned from it. The forensics procedures have gathered strategic intelligence or the collection, processing, analysis, and dissemination of intelligence for forming policy changes. A more in-depth application of strategic intelligence is strategic counterintelligence, which involves gaining information about the attacker's intelligence collection capabilities. Forensics tools. For an endpoint, one important set of tools is imaging utilities used for generating a physical copy of a disk. DD or GNU DD, a utility that requires only minimal resources to run and generates raw image files that can be read by many other programs. However, DD is command line program and lacks some of the useful features found in more modern imagers. such as metadata gathering, error correction, and user-friendly interfaces. There are lots of forensic copy programs that are owned by, there's like FDisk and some other ones that are really, really good. There's FTK Imager, which is down there on the bottom. It just depends, because kind of like Microsoft versus other ones like the Google Docs, each one has its own flavor and price point as well. Forensic tools are not cheap. There are a lot of free ones out there, but there are some that are not free. memdump is a Linux utility that dumps system memory. WinHex is a hexadecimal editor that can be used for forensics. Autopsy, we'll be using this in the digital forensics class next semester. It's really cool. A digital forensics platform. Two of the most common forensic suites are EnCase and FTK Imager. Then there's Wireshark for capturing network traffic to be used in forensic investigations, and TCP dump, which is a command line packet analyzer that displays your TCP IP packets and other packets being transmitted or received over a network. Operates on Unix and Linux operating system, and various forks are available for Windows computers. All right, so this is an example of what EnCase looks like. So this is an image that has been pulled, a forensic image. And if you look on the left, this is a pull down of what the files look like. Autopsy kind of looks like this. I'll have to see if I have any print screens from when we worked with Autopsy, because it's a lot of fun and it looks very similar. Specialized forensics. Mobile device forensics has its whole set of tools just for that. Include call detail records, global positioning or GPS data, app data, short message, SMS service, and photos and videos. They have specialty devices that are just little with like adapters that you can take out to your scenes that'll basically that can do like a full forensic copy of the mobile device out at the scene. They have some really cool stuff. Virtualization forensics. The virtual machine is suspended and resumed later under forensic analysis so that forensic investigator can use normal procedures to analyze the virtual machine. Create a snapshot of the VM and then work directly with the VM files that are stored on the host system. Cloud forensics. Ensure the digital evidence has not been tampered with by third parties. Ask for details about the scope of the impact when a cloud customer is notified by its cloud service provider that an incident has occurred. Consider that the legal, regulatory / jurisdiction laws that govern the site in which the cloud data resides may present difficulties. Remember how I talked about where the servers reside affect your legality? This is what they're talking about. Another knowledge check. What type of cameras should not be used in a forensic investigation? Digital still camera, video still camera, HD camera. Best guess. All right, let's see what they say. Digital still camera. Because digital pictures can be easily altered, some security professionals recommend that photographs be taken with a camera using film. Takes that with a grain of salt. I know a lot of forensic investigators that use digital SLR because they use the digital SLR. They don't use like phones. They use dedicated cameras because you can get better images and do things with them. But they still are digitally. They just make sure to make, there is such things as protecting your SD cards. They do things like that. So Yeah, you can, there's all sorts of things that you can look at, like metadata and things like that on a digital camera. It just depends on the purist of the investigator. Some of them are so paranoid when it comes to using digital anything that they want to go back to using film, which is great. But I started working in dark rooms with film, and if the person is really good with film, there's some amazing things you can do to the film to mess that up too. So I think that you just need to take all of it with a grain of salt and do industry standard best, and be aware that there are going to be paranoid people no matter what you do.
Isn't it also easier to mess up? Well, it's easier to alter digital, obviously, but isn't it easier to mess up with the film?
It is very easy to mess up with film. You can take an entire roll of film, and if you're hand developing it, for example, when you're in a dark room, you cannot look at, even with red light, when you're rolling in your film into a canister in order for it to develop. If you have two pieces of the film touch each other on accident when you're rolling that in, and you don't realize it, and you put it through the chemical baths, those two sections of the film that touch can be ruined. So yeah, it's easy to ruin it one way or the other. So all right, looks like that is the end for that. Do we have any questions about it's just a little tiny primer on forensics and digital incidents? Do you have any questions on that? Any questions on what's coming up this week? None here? Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording.